Fantasy and Some Flights, exploring the realms of beer, board games, books, and bourbon.
Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy and Some Flights podcast. I'm Nelson.
I'm Dalton.
And today we are only talking about flights.
Only talking about flights.
Only talking about flights. So we are doing a beer episode. So
Yes.
Similar to the episode that Dalton brought to us a couple of weeks, months. I don't know. Time means nothing to me anymore.
It was a very long time ago. I think that's episode like 10 or 12 or something is the whiskey episode. And this will be episode like 32.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So
Yeah. But yeah, so we're doing a beer episode today. We're going to be kind of walking through multiple different beers, talking about how beer is made, what you're going to look like, what you're going to look for when you're tasting it.
Yep.
Some different beer terminology, and Dalton and I are going to get hammered. No, I think we're doing a tasting. We're not actually drinking all of this beer, unless you want to. I mean, you do you, man.
I know we may finish them after the episode, but you're right. If we actually tried to consume them during, we would like, okay, record for 5 minutes and then we're gonna sit here for 5 minutes, and then you would just get these skips in like drunkenness. Go off mic and finish the beer and then come back. It would get rough real quick.
And I probably would not actually edit out those breaks. It'd just be like 5 minutes of silence, and then we're coming back. You're the door closed.
Yeah,
pop the can. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. So what's
sure.
on your flight tonight?
I have right now an empty glass.
Oh, well, that's
waiting
very sad.
to be filled.
It's also kind of a special episode because this is one of our last episodes we're going to get to do in person for a while.
I know, right? Yeah, we're actually sitting in a room full of boxes right now.
Yes.
as I am going through a move, so I'm moving to a lot farther away from Nelson. So we've talked about on the podcast that we both currently live in Indiana. I'm moving to Colorado into the Boulder area. So we're going to be kind of switching back after this episode to kind of what it was like last year during when we were recording primarily apart during COVID, and we've done that a couple times since. But the podcast will probably shift to being that as kind of the majority. We'll find times, obviously, to visit each other and slam in an episode or two in person. But yeah, you'll kind of notice a shift there. And that's why that's happening. So it's my fault. I'm the one running away.
Basically, Dalton needs a game group, and this is a cry for help. So if you live in the Boulder area, reach out to us on Instagram, Twitter.
Yes.
So you can play games with Dalton.
Yeah, for sure. I will be needing a new group here. That's like actually one of the scariest things about moving, right? It's like, who am I going to play games with, man? Like,
oh, no.
I know.
Well, we still have our monthly game nights.
For sure. Yeah, that'll tide me over. I'll organize. Yeah, we've been trying to organize some other things, like a Twilight Imperium game, and a lot of people talking about wanting to play Scythe and some things. So I'm sure there will be things to tide me over until I can get an actual game group locked in, or convert enough people. That'll be the long play.
Yes.
Yeah. If they can't find something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the saying actually is it's easier to make friends from gamers than gamers out of your friends. So so just keep that in mind.
It's a populated enough area.
You're gonna find someone. You're gonna find at least 3 people that like board games. I'm sure.
And that's really all you need. Most games are 4-player anyway. So.
Yeah, exactly. So
cool.
All right, well let's just hop into it because we got some beer. I don't want it to get too warm.
Right.
So let's talk about beer. So beer is one of our 4 pillars. So beer, board games, books, and bourbon. So we're talking about beer. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be walking through multiple different types of beer. The way that you want to taste a beer, we'll kind of go into this when we're talking about our first beer. But if you're doing a flight of beer, typically you want to do lightest to heaviest.
Okay.
Because if you start out with like a stout, which is kind of like your heaviest, it's going to like sit on you and sit, in your stomach. Yeah. And it's going to kind of
palate. Yeah.
It's going to be very overpowering. And so we're going to start lightest to heaviest.
Okay.
There are a couple of interpretations on what that actually means. So is it lightest in color? Is it lightest in alcohol? Is it lightest in IBUs?
Yeah.
It's kind of a debate. Like people,
like where does the white stout land in the
I kept looking. I tried to look it up. I didn't get a great answer. And so what we're doing is we're doing a little bit of both, but mainly we're looking at IBUs. So we're increasing in IBUs with a couple of outliers. But no, actually no. I'm looking. Oh yeah, one outlier. But that's a porter. So it's later in the episode. But yeah, so let's start out with
no matter how you judge it, the porter is going to be near the end.
Yes. Yeah, very low IBUs though. Yeah. Let's start out with our first one. So the first beer that we're going to test or drink tonight is Cosmic Hefeweizen from Fountain Square Brewing Company, which is a local Indianapolis brewing company. So this one is a Hefeweizen, which is a German type beer.
I have just right off the bat noticed that it's foamy.
Yes.
It has a head.
Yeah. Germans have a long history with beer, which we'll get into here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But the Hefeweizen is a German beer. And so what you're going to get here is it's going to be light, smooth. You're going to get a little bit of banana flavor with this specific one. But really what you're going to be tasting is something that's not bitter, something that's fairly low in alcohol content. This one's a 5.9, which is about the middle of the road for a craft beer.
Yeah.
Is what we're looking at. But the IBUs are around a 6.
Yeah.
And real quick, I know we talk about IBUs a lot on the episode. I just wanted to kind of, this is the beer episode, so let's just go ahead and define it.
Yes.
So IBU is an abbreviation for the International Bitterness Unit. And basically, it's a gauge of how bitter a beer is. How bitter a beer is. That's a tongue twister right there.
Yeah.
What it's actually measuring is the parts per million of the isohumolone in the beer, which you may know more about what that is than I do because I'm not chemistry.
Yeah, it is a chemical.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
Nice.
That is as much as I know about it. It is a chemical. Oh, I also know that it exists in beer.
Oh.
It is used to measure bitterness.
Yeah, there you go. But isohumolone is the acid found in hops that give beer its bitter bite. However, not always is a higher IBU going to be a more bitter beer.
Right.
It's a good kind of rule of thumb, but the malts that go into the beer also can sweeten it out and kind of counteract that. So you'll see stouts with higher IBU counts, but that's not meaning that they're bitter.
Yeah. Okay.
Typical ranges is going to be like 5 to 120, but it can go higher. Usually you're not going to see anything like over 100.
Okay.
As we're walking through these beers, I'll be mentioning that.
Okay. Have you had anything in that range? Like I'm like the 100. Like I have definitely had things around like, the 0 to 6 apparently.
I don't know what the highest I have had is, but we do have one on the flight tonight that is 90.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we'll get there.
Okay.
We'll get there.
I'll just enjoy my little Hefeweizen for now.
Yeah. But kind of like I was saying, this is going to be a very light, easy to drink beer. It's going to be easy to drink like a big mug of this beer.
Yeah, for sure. Have you tried like this specific one yet?
I have not. No.
Okay. Yeah, it's like you had mentioned banana before, and that like the banana bread definitely comes like it's easy to pick out. This one's also it's sort of like champagne-y. And that it's like very like bubbly.
It is very bubbly.
Yeah. Is that like a common thing for the type, or is that like this specific beer?
I think it is a common thing for like the Hefeweizen. Just there's a German purity law, which kind of like we were talking about this in the bourbon episode, where there's very strict things that can go in like a Scotch, right?
Right.
And so it's the same kind of thing where it's very strict in what can go in it. And I think with that you do get more of a head, which is what you would call the foam at the top.
Right.
Let's talk about how to taste a beer as we're sipping on this one. It's pretty similar to tasting a whiskey. And so we talked about swirling, smelling it, tasting it. And so it's almost identical. So we're not going to dwell too long on it, but you're going to do a quick sniff and a look to kind of get like, the smells, the aromas as you're tasting it, and then also to get a sight of it. Because if you're looking at a beer like this, which is very light, and we're going to go into SRM here in a little bit, which we mentioned on a lot of the episodes, but again, beer episode, thought we'd
just review
that one. So
yeah, I think like one bad habit that I have from whiskey tasting is like we talked in the whiskey episode about tasting with your mouth slightly open, or sorry, you don't want to taste with your mouth open. Just drooling it out. Yeah, it looks like you're from Kentucky. I mean,
hey.
but smelling it with your mouth open so you don't burn your nose. And so I will do that with beer all the time and be like, I can't smell anything.
Yeah, no, don't do that.
Don't do that. You definitely want to close your mouth while you sniff it. And then also like because I am moving, we didn't have access to all the best glassware.
Right.
Right. So I'm using a glass that is probably far too large for the tasting that I'm having, right? The swirling helps though. The swirling helps release some of the like aromas, aromatics as I like actually smell it. But I kind of have to do a lot of swirling because it's such a big glass in order to actually be able to smell it.
Right. The other thing is like take a quick sniff. So with whiskey, I like to drink, or I like to, breathe in a lot and get a lot of it. But try and do more quick sniffs when you're drinking the beer, and you're going to get a little bit more of like an impulse smell.
Gotcha.
So after that, you'll swirl it just like you've been doing. I've seen you do that.
Yeah.
A lot of times people will hold their hand over the beer to swirl it just to kind of give it like a nice swirl. But that's going to release some more aromas. And then that's when you would go ahead and smell it again because you're going to get more smell, especially with this beer, right?
Right.
Because you have to get the aromas up there. But that's why you're smelling it more when you're swirling it. So just kind of like the whiskey.
Yeah.
There's no legs on this one, though. So
Right.
After that, you're going to take a light sip with the front of your tongue.
Okay.
And then after you taste that, you're going to take a sip down to the back of your throat without choking. That's the hardest part. But so the taste with the front of your tongue is just going to be kind of to get that initial taste and hold it in your mouth for a few seconds. It's going to get you kind of like the full body. And then the large sip directly to the back of your throat is going to give you how the beer is going to taste when you're like drinking it.
Okay.
So it's kind of like the artisanal,
Yes.
like, get all the full bodies. But then like when you're actually normally drinking a beer, this is probably what it's going to taste like.
Okay.
Instead of like taking the tiny sips and,
Yes.
being that guy. So, and then step 5 is enjoy your beer. So
Step 5.
Step 5, done.
I love it.
So when you're tasting beer, there are a lot of different ways that you can describe taste.
Yeah.
Kind of going back to the IBU discussion, a lot of beer is described by how bitter it tastes or how sweet it tastes when you're getting into like some of the darker beers. And so as we're going through here, I'm going to try and describe how the beer is going to taste to you and how it's going to be based on the range that we're in.
Yeah.
But I was also just kind of looking it up, and I'm not necessarily going to do it for this episode, but I looked up how to describe the taste of hops because I couldn't think of a way to do that. Right. And apparently there are 14 ways to describe the taste of hops. And so there's citrus, sweet fruits, green fruits, red berries, cream, caramel, woody, aromatic, methanol. Don't want that one. Herbal, spicy, grassy hay, and vegetal. That sounds wrong. But it's like vegetable.
Yeah. It's definitely borderline.
So that's what you're gonna be tasting. So this is the Hefeweizen. What do you think about it? What are your thoughts on the Hefeweizen?
Yeah, I think we've had a couple on maybe one or two on the show already in the past.
So.
I always find that it's like you can get like a good like Hefeweizen, or you can get like a regular or a bad one, but they all, to me, I guess, kind of blend a little bit just in like flavor profiles. And some of that is what you were talking about, like the I always forget the actual term for it, but the German like purity standards. Called. That like severely limit kind of like the flavor profiles that can really be achievable. And so it's coming out of like what hops are they using and stuff. I guess I don't actually know what will help kind of create variety, but I've never been able to like maybe distinguish varieties between different ones. I've just been able to like taste it and be like, oh, I like this one.
Yeah.
Because I know that I like the category in general, if that makes sense.
I 100% agree with you. It's going to be a light, easy, smooth beer, and a lot of them taste this similar to me.
Right.
I think also kind of when you get into the higher gravity beers, so which typically means higher alcohol content, there's a correlation there. It's not exactly. We talked about higher gravity in one of our episodes, I believe. So
we did.
But once you get into those, I find that those are easier to distinguish different profiles when you're tasting.
Okay.
Than like the lighter, the Pilsner. This is not a Pilsner, but like the lighter beers with the lower IBUs. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. We were talking about it being like bubbly earlier. It feels bubblier than like other like Hefes that I've had. And so I don't know if that is just something specific with this one or not. But it's leaving like a champagne-like aftertaste in my mouth, you know?
Yeah, okay.
And so I don't know if that's actually literally coming from the bubbles or if it's just like something else. It's like
it's
psychosomatic.
Psychosomatic at this point, yeah.
I'm having bubbly. It must be bubbly. Yeah, it's the same color. So
if you picture kind of like the iconic picture from like Oktoberfest, like all those beers have really big heads on them.
Yes,
like a lot of foam at the top
for sure.
And so that is something that you're going to see more in a Hefeweizen than you're going to see in like a stout.
That makes sense.
Yep.
That makes sense. This one didn't like hold it very well. I don't know if that's, again, probably because of the glass and the amount that I like put in it, but like it built and then it fizzed out pretty quickly.
Yeah. All right. Ready to move on to our next one?
Yeah. Let's do another.
So our next one it's literally just called Amber. So it is an amber ale. It's from Alaska Brewing Company, right here from Indianapolis. No, it's from Alaska.
Okay.
So it's got a
I was like, the audacity.
Yeah, right. It's got a nice little boat on the cover.
Right.
So
it's very Deadliest Catch.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, there's some crabs on that boat.
Yes.
This amber ale It comes in at about a 5.3% APV.
Okay.
Which is alcohol per volume. This one's going to be a little bit heavier in the IBUs, so a little bit more bitter. It's still only an 18, and so it's not going to be absurdly bitter. But compared to the Hefeweizen, which is a 6, it's going to be a little bit heavier. But yeah, I typically think of a lower IBU as easier to drink. So like your all day beers or something like that are going to be a little bit kind of easier to drink than something that's really bitter or really sweet or really heavy, right, which is what I would associate with a higher IBU count.
Yeah.
So this...
Actually, can I interrupt your train of thought here for a second?
Absolutely.
Because I just realized, I just poured my beer into my glass. Is there like is there a specific way I should be doing this? Any considerations when I actually like just dump it into my glass?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it kind of depends on the glass a little bit. So different beers are meant to be tasted in different glasses, but always what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to tilt the glass and pour it down the side of the glass. And that's going to make sure that, like, if you've poured a beer before just directly into a cup, you get a really big head all of a sudden, and that's not good, and then you have to wait. Like if you're going to a soda fountain and something's like way over carbonated, you get that as well.
Same thing.
So yeah, tilt your glass, pour it down the side, and that's going to allow it to come into the glass without upsetting the carbonation, so that you don't get a huge head, but you will still get, if you pour a full glass, a nice head that's meant to be there. So as you do the sniff, the swirl, the sniff, front of the tongue, back of the throat, enjoy.
Yes.
Which are your 5 steps. You're gonna get more of a malty taste in this in this amber ale. So
I know there's a red coming now.
There is a red coming.
I'm a real sneaky detective like that. I will say, like you're just mentioning the swirl and the swirl and the sniff, the sniff and the swirl and the sniff. I am
sniff, swirl, swipe. Yes.
Sniff. Yep, I'm doing it right. Steps 1, 2, 3. I like just off the bat. This one is a lot more aromatic. Like you just pick up a lot more.
Oh yeah.
On like you just pick up a much stronger, almost like a plum kind of scent.
Okay, yeah.
Than like the Hefeweizen, which was a little bit more like bland.
Water.
A little more watery maybe.
And you'll also see that in the first thing that you do is you take this quick sniff and you also look at the beer.
Yeah.
And so this is a darker beer
sure
than the Hefeweizen. So
it's got more of like a ruddy, almost orange type color going on.
And that's why I called it a red, because it almost looks like a
red.
red,
It almost looks red. Yeah.
So this is going to be more malty, and malty can be described as like a sweet or nutty taste, similar to like a toast, caramel, or coffee.
Okay.
Or raisins.
Raisins is a good one for it. Yeah, marzipan or something.
Yeah. And so like the heavier malty beers, like your stouts or your porters, you're going to be getting more of that, but you're still going to be starting to get that. It's going to be more sweet than bitter at this point still with the amber.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would not describe this beer as bitter anyway.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. I know. I'm trying to enjoy it while I can.
Yeah, exactly.
I am excited because I have, as much as I joke about the bitter beers, like there's it's half the beer world or something like that is bitter beers, right? And so it's something that I want to enjoy and want to know how to enjoy. And so you're working me up. You're also going to help. You're going to get me drunk before I get there.
Yes, exactly.
Or at least tipsy before I get there, which I very much appreciate.
Yeah, we do have the Imperial Stout for last.
There we go. Finish off the night strong.
Ooh, very strong.
But in the meantime, we have an amber ale.
We're talking about amber ales, which are a little bit lighter.
A little lighter.
So I feel like it would be a poor beer episode if we didn't at least talk about how beer is made. I feel like that seems pretty critical to the whole beer deep dive.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I will say the first time I ever saw beer made was, heard about it, was on How It's Made. Did you watch that show on Discovery? Yeah. I think there was a beer episode. I remember watching it being 16, like, wow. That looks nasty.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah. Ew.
Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah, not the end product, but the in-betweens are kind of nasty.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, they really are.
All right, tell me about it.
Okay, so it's actually fairly simple in the terms of like kind of the ingredients. So people have gotten kind of crazy with adding crazy ingredients, but at its very basic point, it's basically barley, hops, yeast, and water and time.
Yeah.
You let it sit in there, and it makes the alcohol and it makes it bubbly and you're good. But basically what you're going to do is you're just going to start out with the malted barley, which is the grain, and you're going to mix it with hot water and stir it together and creating what we would call the mash. This water can make a huge difference in the taste of the beer as well. And so like you see like the Colorado Rockies, like Coors Light, they tout that, water from the Rockies, and that actually will make a difference.
Yeah.
The type of water that you use.
Yeah. Especially in Coors, because that's most of what's in there.
Yeah. They put some hops in there. Right. Yeah. So the calcium and magnesium levels in the water will affect both how the yeast grows and how the sugar is metabolized during the fermentation process.
Very cool.
The other kind of thing about the water is the pH of the water, the acidity of the water can affect the taste.
Okay.
There's not like, no one's going to give you that trade secret on, no one's going to say it was a pH of 7, which I think is normal. Is that like water?
That's neutral.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Just want to make sure I wasn't killing our listeners. They're not going to say it's a pH of 7 when they're describing their beer, right?
Right.
People are more concerned about the taste.
Yeah.
So historically, at this point, when we're talking about combining the barley and the water, historically what would happen is a multi-step temperature mash. And what this is they would mix it at multiple different temperatures to bring out different proteins or different parts of the barley as it's going through. However, now that kind of modern malt science has taken over, people are growing these specifically for beer.
Okay.
It's kind of gone down to a single step infusion is what they call it now. Okay. Which is typically you mix the barley with hot water around 148 to 158 degrees Fahrenheit. And then this is also what a home brewer would do. They're not going to go through a multi-step mash. They don't have the... Right. So if you're boiling it on the stovetop, this is what you're going to shoot for, is around that temperature. Yeah. Well, you take the mash after that, and you're going to drain off with a sugary liquid, which is called the wort. And so it's spelled wort, but it's pronounced wort, W-E-R-T. Yeah. It's spelled W-O-R-T. But then... You're going to have some like solids remaining. So like, you'll put it through a strainer or something. These can be either composted or actually people have like used it in baking goods. So you can use it as however you want, but really what the goodness is it's wort. This is what's going to get you tasty drunk. Yes.
And at this point, I think we talked in the whiskey episode about this, but at this point, you're actually not too far off from being able to deviate and go make whiskey if you want to, right?
So if you want to make a game day decision, you can.
Yes. It's risky.
Yeah, I mean, you do you.
Yeah, but again,
I'll try it.
I'll try it, right?
So you have the wort at this point, and then what you're going to do is you're going to boil that with your hops, and this is where all the flavor comes in, is hops. And so there's, I have it somewhere in my notes. I think there's like 120 different types of hops. Okay. And the combinations or the types of hops that you use are going to be the flavor profile that you're going to get combined with the water and all of this. But the majority of the flavor comes from the hops. You actually don't need hops to make beer. You just need it to taste good. Yes. So you can make beer that's, I wonder if that's how they make Coors.
Maybe that is.
But hops are they're actually a flower, which they don't look like a flower. If you've seen, it's like that green, like bud. Right. It's actually a flower from the Humulus lupus plant, which is actually the same strand or the same family as marijuana. So they kind of look similar.
They do, yeah.
But yeah, so I thought that was kind of interesting. But those are the hops. So it's actually, you're putting flour in your beer. So, so at this point, you have probably a very bad tasting something or another that you're going on. There's not going to be any carbonation. There's not going to be any alcohol in it. So where that comes in is actually the yeast. And so yeast is used. You're going to use it and you're going to put it in a container containing the yeast. And the yeast is what's going to convert the sugar from what you created when you boiled the barley and the water together. The yeast converts the sugar into ethanol, which is the stuff that gets you drunk, and then CO2, which is the bubbles. Yeah. And so if you don't have the right amount of yeast or you don't let it sit for long enough, you're going to get a very flat beer or something that does not get you drunk. Right. Which is, not great.
Yeah, not the point.
When you take the yeast and you put it into this container, you're going to probably bottle it a couple weeks after that. And then if you open those too soon, you're going to get flat or tasteless beer.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Typically, everything up to adding the yeast takes about 4 hours in a homebrew sense. And then after the yeast, they can sit for anywhere from about 4 weeks to a year. Okay. Is probably where you want to be sitting. Again, in a homebrew sense. There's ways to make it last longer. Yeah. Or not last at all.
Yeah. Okay. What, I guess, then is the differences between the types of beer that we're looking at? Like, what's going to set an amber apart from, I guess, the Heffa that we've already tried?
It's going to be a lot with the ingredients and mainly like the type of yeast. And so we'll talk about it a little bit later with lagers and ales, the difference there. So that would determine the type of yeast and where it ferments dictates if it's going to be an ale or a lager.
Okay.
And then also just like the combination of what barley or your hops to get the different types of beer.
Okay. And you said that they are roasting the barley, right? Or is that always the case?
No, it's not always the case.
Okay.
So you can roast the barley to get kind of like a deeper, thicker, maltier taste. But you are just combining the barley. Sometimes you can roast it before you combine it with the water.
Okay.
And so the pre-processing of the barley can also play an effect into the type of beer that you have.
Gotcha. I'm learning so much.
Me too. As we're still kind of sipping on this, let's talk about SRM real quick. So SRM is the standard reference measurement, the standard reference method, and it's the way that we would specify a beer's color. Mm-hmm. And so we've talked about this on our previous episode, but the way that you calculate this is that you take the attenuation, which is the loss of light that passes through the beer at specifically 430 nanometers, which is a dark blue. So you shine the light through the beer, and basically how much light reaches the other side of the beer is the SRM.
Okay.
Or it goes into the formula to get you the SRM. This doesn't give you all of the beer's color. It gives you about 92% of the spectral information that you would need to get the beer's color. To get 100%, you would actually need 81 points. And so this one method was dictated to be good enough, diminishing returns at that point. So,
yeah, for sure.
Right, you need 80 more points to get 100%. But yeah, that's the SRM, which is kind of the standard reference. The European standard is the same measurements. It's just a different factor. To get the EBC from the SRM, it's actually just like almost a 2 factor. It's 1.97.
Okay.
So if you multiply your SRM by 2, you're going to get around the EBC.
Okay.
So with this specifically amber ale, we're looking at a SRM of about 8 or 9.
Okay.
With the Hefeweizen that we tried earlier, that was around a 3. And so it's a much lighter. We'll put the chart in the show notes just to kind of get an idea, because it is kind of interesting to see kind of the gradients and all the different colors that beers can be.
Yeah.
And it's kind of it's the same couple ingredients, but you get so much different colors for just how it's processed. So the SRM, we'll be kind of talking through those as we're going through tasting the next couple of beers.
And I do like ambers just in general, but specifically I'm really enjoying this one. This one's very good.
The Alaskan?
Yeah, the Alaskan
Good.
Amber. It says alt style ale. I don't know why they call it that, but
yeah. So I looked it up.
Did you really?
Yes. So alt beer, it basically ferments more slowly and at colder temperatures than most ales.
Okay.
So typically a lager will ferment at a colder temperature, but this is still an ale because it's a top fermenting yeast, but it's colder, which Alaska, right?
Yeah.
I don't quite know. I think you're gonna get a more malty flavor at that point.
Yeah.
Because
I think, like I said, I was picking up that sort of plum or raisin or fruitcake type smell and taste, and I think you're right that's malt is that way. Like, I think when people hear malt, they think sweet, and it's like, okay, yes, it is sweet, but it's not like sugar, right? It's not like milk stouts or something. That's a different type of sweet than just being malty.
Right. Yep. It's gonna taste different than if you just like take a spoonful of sugar.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. But this would actually be a good beer if you were like, this is kind of what like a strong malt flavor tastes like. This is actually a decent beer to use as that example.
All right, let's move on to our next beer, which is the Kentucky Irish Red, which is also from Alaska. But no, this is the Irish Red Ale. So it's from Lexington Brewing Company. I did pick it out because it was Kentucky, of course.
Yep.
This one is a little bit lighter in alcohol content. It's only a 5.3%, but it's going to be slightly bitter. So our last amber was at 18. This is at a 19 IBU.
Okay.
So we're going to be a little bit more bitter.
You're really stepping me up here.
Yeah, we're
18
baby
to
steps.
19.
The next jump is 40. Damn. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Yeah. So the Irish Red here, it's going to be what you said, actually, just right as we were pouring it. It's about the same color as the amber. Mm-hmm. And so, which is why I called the amber a red. Reds typically range in an SRM of about 9 to 18. This one is on the lighter side of like about a 9, I would say. So it's not going to be bitter. It's more malty again. We're still, adding that bitterness as we go along.
Yeah.
And reds, I think we've said it before on the podcast, they're just solid, right?
Yeah.
They are if you're not going to be disappointed when you drink a red.
Right.
And the reason that they're so closely related to like ambers, and like both color and taste, is that they are similar, but red ales use a specialty roasted malt that creates a unique complexity within the finished beer. Okay. And so it's the type of malt, and it's a little bit, maybe going to be a little bit sweeter than the amber that you are tasting, or maybe you're going to get some butterscotch or caramelized flavors when you're drinking a red.
Okay, yeah.
And it's also like that is what's going to give it the reddish colors, that specialty malt.
Okay.
And so this one is probably the least offensive red looking beer I've seen. Right. So this one we are drinking out of a bottle, so I didn't get to see it before we poured it. But
right. Yeah. It just looks brown in the bottle.
Yeah. It's weird. I don't know. The SRM is like 40.
This is very dark glass looking.
Take it out of the bottle before
there
you
we
shoot
go.
the laser at it.
There we go. That makes more sense.
As you're doing your 5 steps and you're enjoying, what are your thoughts on the red?
I have always, I guess when I've tasted reds, like they do taste slightly different than other beers, right? You can just like, in a lineup, you can pick out. It's like, oh, like, like that's a red. They have a flavor profile or something that you can kind of pick out and notice. I've never heard it described as like a butterscotch type flavor, because I think, first of all, that might lead you to think that it's sweeter than it is,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like, but you're right that like the flavor, the aftertaste, the taste that it's like leaving on the back of my tongue is kind of reminiscent of like a butterscotch type flavor, but just a more bitter butterscotch, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's like butterscotch, but they kind of forgot the sugar.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's one way to think about it. This one specifically is like, it's like what you had said, that it is exactly what you expect to get from a red. It's not surprising. It's not disappointing in any way. It's just like, yeah, this is what I expected, and it's what I got.
As we're tasting this one, I do want to talk a little bit about different types of glasses. And so you've seen in bars or in movies when people bring out a beer, a lot of the times they're in like what we call a pint glass, which is just a normal.
Right.
I don't know how to describe it other than a pint glass. Right. It's 16 ounces and it looks conical. Like
yes, it's just a straight edge, right?
Yep.
It doesn't have any curvature to it or anything. It's just a round glass.
Yep. And we would consider the pint glass kind of a jack of all trades. So any type of beer can really go in a pint glass. You're just not going to get the full experience for a beer that's specifically made for a different glass. But this is the one that you can always go to. Basically, different beers are meant to be tasted slightly differently, and the glass allows you to drink it slower, drink it faster, or I guess not faster, like drink it normal speed.
Yeah.
Or drink it slower for your higher gravity, your stouts or your IPAs. You're going to not want to drink those as quickly. I mean, more power to you, but like we're going to be doing that. I do have in here that we're going to be using a pint glass for all of these, but we're not. We're actually using what we would call like a tulip glass.
Yeah.
Which is specifically made for an IPA or a heavier beer.
Right. Because it was in the freezer to keep it cold, which meant it was hidden, and so it was not packed in a box.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's why we're using this one. What type of beer would you like normally use a tulip glass for?
I'm glad you asked. You're going to look for this in like a IPA. Basically what it is, when it fills up, it's going to keep all of the aromatics, because in an IPA, the smells are just going to be significantly stronger than what we're going to be seeing in the Hefeweizen or the Reds or the Ambers.
Right.
And so when you get that, because it's kind of like a bowl shape.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like a tulip, right?
Right, the actual flower, yeah, where it's kind of bulbous in the bottom and then it kind of tapers at the top.
Yep. And so what that's doing is that's kind of funneling all of those aromas right to you. So as you're drinking it, you can get that smell right there and it's not escaping as much.
For sure.
So
for sure. Yeah, because the size of the like lip is such that like your nose still like sits inside the glass when you're actually drinking from, sort of like a red wine glass would be kind of like a similar shape or a similar experience.
Yeah, that's a great way to push it. There are a lot of different glass types, which I just found fascinating. Like I went down this rabbit hole. With the Irish Red, you're going to be wanting to drink it out of a Pilsner glass.
Okay.
And I think of Pilsner glasses as like the glasses that you get at a baseball game.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if that's the right way to do that or if that's just my own headcanon. But like, it's going to be like this very like hourglass type shape. I guess like one half of an hourglass type shape. It's a tall, skinny kind of, it looks like you got a lot more beer than you actually do.
Yeah.
Because it's so skinny.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right that's like totally how they are That's what they are designed. It feels like designed to do at baseball games, or why they're used at baseball games. Like, here, have this giant beer, and it's like it's actually kind of a normal sized beer.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
But it looks awesome, man.
Yeah. The Pilsner glass is also specifically designed to keep a head.
Okay.
And so like with the tulip glasses, you're gonna lose your head a little bit quicker than with the Pilsner glass. You're just gonna get more carbonation, and that's why you see like at the big ball game, you got this big ass head too.
Yes.
Which is probably why saving some beer there. They're pouring it to make that head, so you're actually getting less beer than what you get. But I was reading some statistics. I think it was like 51% of adults drink at baseball games or drink at sporting events, and the majority of that is beer. So
yeah,
the Irish Red here is probably, outside of like an IPA, it's probably going to be one of my more favorite types of beer.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. If I'm drinking a craft beer, it's probably an IPA.
Mm-hmm.
Unless I'm drinking it during the day or something like that, which I would probably get like an all-day IPA or a session IPA, which is a little bit less than the alcohol. But if I had to pick one that wasn't that, I would probably go with a red. Mm-hmm. I think they're just solid. Yeah. I wanted to hop back a little bit to talk about the previous two beers and talk about their glass, because Dalton's eating pretzels, which is something that you should be doing, right? Like when you're tasting beer, or when you're doing like a flight, you want to be doing lighter to darker, but you do want to be drinking water and or eating something salty, or like a cracker or pretzels to cleanse the palate in between, or else you're going to start getting mixing of flavors. But so if you hear some,
and we're a high quality podcast, we don't want any mixing of flavors between our craft beers.
No, absolutely not.
Pshaw.
So the Hefeweizen, so this is actually supposed to be drank out of a special glass called the Weizen. They're actually typically thinner glass structure. It's almost like Pilsner glass that we described, but if someone like squeezed it really hard, like at the base. So it's kind of like almost that full hourglass shape.
Okay.
Where it's like, the top half, and then you get a little bit of the bottom half of the hourglass shape. But it's actually specifically made for like the Hefeweizen or like a wheat beer to bring out the banana aromas. I don't have all of these glasses. I do think it'd be really interesting to try it. Yeah. Like, try it in a stout, or not a stout glass, but like a pint glass, and then try it out of a Weizen glass and see if, I can taste any difference. I probably wouldn't be able to, but.
And then try it out of a tulip glass.
Yeah, and then try it out of a tulip glass, and then try it out of a solo cup, and I probably taste all the same. So we do not recommend you drink craft beer from a solo cup. However, it has been done before.
By us.
By us on the podcast. And then the amber is actually designed to be drunk. The amber is designed to be drank out of a Pilsner glass. Okay. So we kind of talked about that before, but so the Irish Red and the amber, since they are so similar, they're actually designed for the same glass.
Gotcha.
Or they're optimal for the same glass.
Yep.
The next beer is also designed for a Pilsner glass because it's a Pilsner. Segue. Nice. This is actually the only lager on our flight tonight. So we are tasting multiple beers. All of them are ales, and this Pilsner is the only lager. Lagers are actually more popular than ales are. Mainly because a lot of the
in terms of like volume. Yeah, volume consumed.
Yes, because all of your Coors Light, Budweiser, those are all going to be lagers. The Pilsners, they're going to be lagers. And so those are Pilsners. However, there are good Pilsners. And like it reminds me of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Yeah. Like Amy's boyfriend or whatever.
Yeah, Teddy, I think.
Teddy just loves Pilsners. Just like the perfect. Yeah, we were talking about this like our last game. It's just like the perfect like middle of the road like average dude. Yeah. Just love the pills. Got a thrill for the pills.
Thrills for the pills.
But yes, this is Caracan, and it's literally just called pills. So, but this is actually made out of Cincinnati. Oh, very cool. So go ahead and pour yourself some of that, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference in lager and ales.
Okay, tell me about it.
These are the two main categories. There are other types of categories of beer, but I would say the majority of all of your beers are going to be either a ale or a lager. The other notable one that does not fall into that category, which is gaining a little bit more traction in the last couple of years, are sours. Yeah. The type of yeast that is used to create an ale, it ferments at a higher temperature, and then it stays at the surface of the beer during the fermentation process. And it's going to be super toasty. It's going to be kind of giving you that the toasty flavor, whereas a lager is going to have kind of like a crisper, cleaner taste. And so yeah, just like if you think of like an IPA versus like Budweiser or something like that, like I do think that the IPA or the Budweiser probably has a crisper taste, right? Like
Right.
it's not a good taste necessarily, but I say that I'm wearing a Budweiser t-shirt, so
Not too much room to judge.
yeah, it was $4 at Walmart. So.
There you go.
But yeah, the lagers are gonna have a crisper, cleaner taste, and that's because the yeast that are used to create the lagers are fermenting at a lower temperature, and they sink to the bottom of the container during the fermentation process.
Okay.
It kind of just floats around. So
Right. So when you say like that it's crisper, are you thinking that they have just like overall a simpler or more direct like flavor profile, or is it like that the taste is faster? Like, what, you know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to describe what you mean by kind of crisper.
yes, so I don't think it's technically correct to say that it has less or like one single taste in it just because it's a lager. I do think that they tend towards that. However, you can add different types of malt or hops to pull out different types of flavors. When I'm talking about crisper, I think that the taste probably it's not going to linger in your mouth as long.
Okay.
As like a more full body ale. And so when you do the tip of your tongue and then the back of your throat and remember that last part.
Right.
It's going to be kind of a quicker, the taste is going to be over a little bit quicker. You're not going to get that lingering like bitterness in your
Right.
throat. And so it's going to be easier to drink more of it. Probably why you see a lot of these like mass
Right, that's
market
why it's so
beers
popular, yeah.
is because it's a little bit easier to drink. I don't necessarily know if it's cheaper or easier to make. I don't think it's easier to make a lager.
Okay.
It may be cheaper. I will clarify that in the show notes. But it's just the different type of yeast.
So like the difference between lagers and ales has always just been a gap in my knowledge. It's like I've just never known. I knew that they were different, and I knew that everything was an ale that I drank.
Yes.
That's like all I knew about the two. It is super interesting and novel to me, I guess, that the only real difference is the type of yeast that you buy. Like that's kind of what differentiates the two.
Yep. It's the type of yeast that you buy, and again the type of yeast and what temperature it ferments at. And so so ales are fermenting around 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, whereas lagers are fermented colder, 35 to 50 degrees.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so that's not a brewing technique necessarily, as it is just like you're not going to get the fermentation process at 70 degrees with a yeast that would make a lager.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
So there are kind of two factors there, but yeah, there's not that much difference in between the two. That gives it such a different taste and a feel.
Yeah.
And it's just the different types of yeast, which is
Gotcha.
kind of interesting.
Yep.
So this is the pills. I guess we really haven't talked about it. What do you think about this?
Interestingly enough, you had talked about the ales kind of tasting fruitier, but I think like this specific pills is actually like it has sort of almost like an apple juice type of
Yeah,
like,
it does.
like subtle flavor going on.
Yep.
It has a bit of fruitiness to it. It's so weird to me how you can taste like the similarity to like your Budweisers and your big domestic beers, but it tastes good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like it tastes like, oh, like this is what it could be like. How it has like this like very subtle like fruity flavor. It doesn't have just like almost like the chalky like weird
Yeah.
bitterness that like some, and it's bitterness is even too strong of a word. I don't know, but just the badness.
Yeah,
that
the badness, yeah.
it doesn't have the badness. Like
It tastes cleaner.
it tastes cleaner is a
Yeah.
good way to put it. Yeah.
And so what that is actually is the kind of what we were talking. Most of the flavor comes from the hops that are used that you boil with the wort. And so this beer specifically, the Karakin, the brewery uses what they describe as tangy hops. So they don't give you the strand of hops, but it is that tangy, and you can taste that apple or that kind of fruity flavor there.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you put this in with an ale yeast, you would get probably heavier on that side, but it's kind of like a nice, refreshing, crisp. Like I think you put it's like an apple juice almost. Like it's kind of nice. So
For sure. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. And I expected this one to be one of the ones that I enjoyed the least on this episode. But so far it's like, actually, this is pretty good. I could definitely see myself like drinking this beer and like even ordering it, and enjoying it.
So you're saying you got the thrills for the pills.
I got the thrills, man. Holy cow.
One of the other things that I wanted to talk about with Pilsners is that this is actually a higher IBU. So it's a little bit more bitter. Again, that's not always the case than our Irish Red. So we're sitting at a 29, whereas our Irish Red was a 19. And so I don't know if you can distinguish that taste at all.
Yeah, I think you had also mentioned that like some of the sometimes the IBU can be deceiving because it can be balanced, right? And so I think the actual specific like hop choice here is helping to balance some of that out, because I would expect a 29 IBU to feel more bitter than this one specifically. And maybe this is also just a really good one. I don't know. Like maybe we're just, we're kind of pitching for Karakin Pills here. We're enjoying it. But
the new sponsor of the podcast.
Right. Oh man. It's going to take over Elijah Craig. Holy cow.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, the beer sponsor of the podcast.
The beer sponsor of the podcast. There we go. Yeah, we don't have an official beer sponsor yet. So, the spot is up for the taking, little beers. Do your best. So far though, I don't know. So far Karakin, I'm between the Amber and the Karakin pills on the night so far.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah. And actually, you know what? The pills might be edging it out. I never thought I would say that on this episode, but it might be edging it out.
I have historically discounted Pilsners just because they are Pilsners.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just like I'm not ordering a Pilsner. I'm better than that. I'm not ordering a Pilsner.
I can get like 30 of those for $15. Like, I don't want to do that.
But exactly. Teddy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine orders that. I'm not going to do that.
Exactly. I do think that as I have kind of gotten older, or as I've just drank more, and like just tried different things, I do find that Pilsners are not as bad as the name think. But also it just kind of sounds dirty, Pilsner. It's like, I don't know. So the other thing that's going to distinguish a Pilsner in this sense is it's going to be very light. So the SRM on this is probably like almost as light as it can get, maybe like a 2.
Yeah.
Right. So it looks almost yellow.
Oh, it absolutely. Yeah, we were saying it tastes like apple juice, but apple juice is way darker.
Yes.
It looks like pear juice.
Yes, it looks like pear juice. Tastes like apple.
Yeah.
Gets you drunk. I don't know what more you want.
What do you want? Yeah, a very nice choice.
Good.
Thanks for including it in the our single lager.
Yes, our single lager. I looked for more, but then I was just like, there's just like I was trying to limit myself to 18 beers.
Holy cow! Help me! I'm trying.
Oh no!
I've been tricked in the best possible way.
Yeah, no. I was trying to just kind of get a full flavor profile all the way through.
Yeah.
But I needed to include at least a lager on here because I was like, I would not be able to live it down
for sure
if I didn't. So
yep.
Now we're starting to get into the realm of types of beer that I really enjoy, and so this next beer, which I have had, obviously, is the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
Mm-hmm. I imagine a lot of the viewers have probably had this beer.
Yes, it's a very popular beer. It's actually Sierra Nevada's most famous beer, or their most produced beer. But
I
this
think I called
is
you viewers, by the way. You're listeners. I know you're not viewers. Unless one of you is, in which case, please stop. Check like, over the shoulders.
Shut the blinds. We need to record in the basement from now on.
Yeah.
We're just over the halfway point, so this is our 5th beer of the night, and so hopefully you're feeling still pretty good. But we're also going to start getting into the higher alcohol content of beers.
Right.
This one is not necessarily higher alcohol content. This one's sitting at a 5.6, which is right about the middle of a road for a pale ale or an IPA. It's going to be more bitter than your Pilsners or anything that we've had before. This one's sitting at a 38. Yeah. And so to just kind of remind our viewers,
as you were, as you are known.
Yes, as you are known. The Pilsner was a 29, whereas the Pilsner was using that. The IBUs were a little bit higher, but it was kind of balanced out. You weren't getting a lot of the hoppy. When you get into pale ales or the IPAs, this is kind of where the hops like to shine. Like they are not trying to balance out the hops; they're trying to display the hops in the beer. This is also hard for a lot of people when they're drinking because it's not necessarily the greatest flavor for a new drinker. Like if you like black coffee, you're probably more akin to liking like hoppier beer or red wine and hoppier beer. So it's kind of like those like. I think that they're good. It's just harsher when you're drinking it. It's less sweet.
Yeah, peated scotch.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I don't like that though. That was not good. No, says I. This is the pale ale. Really, it's just kind of the bridge. So we're getting to again some of the higher alcohol contents or the high gravity beers going down the list, but this is just kind of that bridge, so we didn't jump directly into like a double IPA from a Pilsner because that would punch you in the face.
Appreciate that.
So, I have found with this pale ale specifically that it's almost like got a tinge of spice to it. Do you taste that at all?
Yeah, I can see that.
I enjoy the pale ale from Sierra Nevada, and I think that's one of the reasons. It tastes a little bit more kicky. Because adjectives and words are hard.
Yeah, yeah. But like, have you ever had like just like a pepper beer? You know what I mean?
That sounds
I don't
bad.
like. I'm trying to. I'm sure that's not like the technically correct term, but I have had a beer from a bomber that just had a pepper in it. You know, like a
yes,
hot or a
yes. No,
spicy
I have
beer
had one of those.
Is
Yeah,
what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
And this is not that to that level, but in the aftertaste, it's like, okay, I could see how, you know, maybe it has like a little bit of like a chili flavor or something in the aftertaste. The
recommended glass for a pale ale, kind of the middle of the road, getting in there. You named it a pint glass, so, you know, just the jack of all trades glass. So I wanted to use this beer as we're just kind of transitioning into kind of the heavier beers as just some fun facts for beer. Mm-hmm. And so we talked a little bit earlier about the German purity law, which was defined in Germany in 1516, stating that nothing other than barley, hops, and water can be used to produce beer. You are missing a key ingredient there, which they added yeast when they realized it was important in the making of beer. So so now the purity law has now been revised.
In 1516, they didn't know what yeast was.
Yeah. So they got it there. The German purity law states that only barley, hops, yeast, and water can be used in the making of beer.
Yeah.
And so all of this orange peel type bullshit that
Fruity
America does doesn't fly over in Germany.
Yeah.
Well, let's play some trivia with this. This will be fun.
Okay.
Of the popularity of drinks, where do you think beer falls in the list?
Popularity of so
all not necessarily alcoholic, just drinks of all time.
Drinks of all time. I feel like, is water considered one?
Yes.
Okay, if water's considered, I feel like third. I'm wondering if it beats out wine. Wine is the hard one, and tea, right? Wine and tea are the big ones that I'm trying to figure out. So I'm gonna place it third. That's fine.
You are correct.
Really? Yes.
So it goes water, tea, then beer.
Then beer.
I don't drink a lot of tea, and so I didn't think about that, but I do realize that a lot of tea is drink.
Yes, specifically in two countries that have very large populations.
Yes. Yeah. What would you think the annual profit for beer production in the United States is per year?
The annual profit.
Yes.
Man, that is tough. I wonder if it's actually a high margin thing or if it's a pretty low margin. You know,
I would guess that it's pretty high margin.
It can't be all that.
Well, it's so cheap.
Expensive.
I'm thinking of
yeah.
But I mean, they make a lot of it.
They make a lot of it. So oh man, what's the GDP of America? Is beer. Let's go
7% of that. So
right, 7% of that. Let's go with $10 billion. Nice round number.
Close. You're off by a factor of 10. $100 billion.
Holy cow!
That's a lot of money, guys. That is a lot of money just for liquid. Right?
Yeah.
Just for funny juice.
Just for funny juice.
All right, so let's move on. So we'll talk about history of beer here in a little bit. Okay. But beer was kind of first made in the Middle East, and Egyptians drank a lot of beer.
Okay.
So how many different types of beer do you think Egyptians had listed out?
I don't know. 7.
17.
17.
So you got one of the numbers right.
One of the numbers right. I'm actually, I'm consistently off by fact,
You just need to add a digit.
Yeah, exactly. I'm off by one digit somewhere.
Yep. But 17, and they had names like Joybringer and Heavenly.
Oh,
so
that's weird. I didn't realize they spoke English.
Yeah, I know, right? But who knew? McDonald's actually offers beer on a lot of menus around the world.
What?
Yeah, not in America. I actually don't know if I want a McDonald's beer, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, you know what I mean? It's McDonald's offers Coke and it doesn't taste any different.
Yeah, okay. That's fair.
As long as it's not McDonald's brand beer.
McDonald's Pilsner. Ugh.
But you know how you go to McDonald's at during a night of drinking,
yes.
Guys, fuck, we just need some McDonald's.
Just
settle it. And if they had beer, you'd be like, wait a second.
Bro.
Right. This kicks it up a notch. That would be awesome.
Unfortunately, they are not in the United States. They are in some of the countries that our listeners are from, so this may not be a fun fact for them.
Yeah, they're yeah, I know.
But they some of the countries are France, Germany, Portugal, South Korea. And so a lot of
cool places.
But I guess when I was in Germany, I never went to a McDonald's, so I didn't notice this.
Right, yeah, that's a good point. It's I got better things to do than go to McDonald's.
Maybe I'll go next time I'm in South Korea to see if they have a beer for me at McDonald's. Maybe I'll just go take a picture. Then I'll
Yeah,
probably leave
because I'm
at
sure
that
you
point.
would go like order something, get the beer, and then be like, "This isn't as great as it sounded."
Yeah. Right. As we're finishing off this pale ale, I have one more fun fact. Well, actually, I have a lot more fun facts, but one more fun fact for this beer segment specifically. Another trivia question for you. So, what APV do you think is the highest or the strongest beer in the world? I'll give you a hint. It's actually not a hint. The name is Snake Venom. if that tells you anything. But what alcohol content do you think that this beer has?
See, like now I'm just trying to think of like alcohol contents that I have seen.
Yeah.
And then like at what point is it no longer beer?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with 18%.
18%.
Yeah.
Okay, so beers typically range between 3 and 10%.
Uh-huh.
Most vodka is about 35 to 40%.
Mm-hmm.
Wine is somewhere in there like 18-ish percent.
Right. That's actually kind of why I was settling on. I was like, I know 18 is like wine range.
Snake Venom was 67.5%.
What?
It was a Scottish brewery that that made it.
I think you mean distillery.
Yeah, they took a left turn at the mash.
That's right. That's right.
Like, wait a second.
Right.
We listened to the episode of Fantasy and Some Fights, and they said that we could make a beer.
That's right. At this point, you can make beer.
That is too strong for
That
a
is
beer.
insane.
Yeah.
You have to just
You have to water it back. Put an
water
ice cube
it
in
back,
it.
like barrel proof. Like that's what that is, Holy cow.
Oh man, not a fan.
Not
a
a
fan. I would.
And it would be bubbly. That would be so weird.
Yeah, that'd be yeah. I would try it.
I mean, sure.
It's probably expensive. It's probably expensive as shit. But
Yeah,
like,
probably.
I would try it.
I'm sure it's like kind of difficult to make. How do they even like yeast will die at that? You know what I mean? Like you can't just like ferment it to get it to that. That's why you have to distill it to get to that alcohol volume. Or so like
Yeah.
how'd they even do that?
I have no idea. I just thought it was a fun fact, so I put it in the
That
notes.
is a very fun fact. It raises some serious questions.
Right?
It's a very fun fact.
Maybe they're just like mixing with vodka or something. No, that wouldn't even do it. They're
Yeah.
mixing it with like ethanol. Just,
Yeah.
they're just
That's like
pouring
grain
gasoline.
alcohol. Like went and got Everclear and just
Ugh.
pumped it in the barrel.
Ooh, Everclear is not a good drink. All right, you ready to move on?
Yeah. Let's move on from that.
Okay. Our next one is an IPA. So an Indiana Pale Ale.
Indiana Pale Ale because we're in Indiana.
Yes. Or an India Pale Ale. So this is 90-minute Imperial IPA, which is from Dogfish Head.
Very
Which
cool.
You may have heard of this before.
Yeah, I've had like others from Dogfish Head, and
Cool.
it's a very recognizable packaging and a very recognizable, at least around these parts, like
It's like a shark logo.
Yeah, it's like a shark logo. People drink it a lot,
Yep.
so very common.
Yep. So this is the 90-minute Imperial IPA. There are a couple of other beers in this line. There's the 60-minute IPA, which is going to be a little bit easier to drink. It's less hoppy. And then there's the 120-minute IPA, which is like $20 a bottle.
Okay.
And so I did not get that one.
Okay, that's
sorry,
fine. I
sorry.
would not be capable of appreciating it.
Yeah,
anyway.
right. I have had the 120, and it is actually very good.
Oh, cool.
You cannot drink a lot of it.
Yeah.
Because it's like 18% or something like that. It's
Okay.
dumb.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
Is the minutes? Is that how long it's recommended to consume it over?
yes, actually.
Is it really?
No. Okay, maybe not really. So the 60 minutes, the 90 minutes, and the 120 minutes are talking about how long the hops are boiled with the wort.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
So the other difference is that a 60-minute IPA is 60 IBU, 90 minute is 90, and 120 is actually 120 minute
wow.
IBU. So I don't know how they do that. Magic, I guess. But like, so that's another distinguishing fact. So the 120 minute is going to be significantly better than what you're drinking now, too.
Gotcha. Well done.
So this is the 90-minute Imperial IPA. You're taking a couple of sips. What are your thoughts on it? I know you're not a huge IPA fan.
Yeah, I'm not typically, and I think part of that is just because like the bitterness is like
Jarring.
it's jarring, right? And
Yep.
it's a divisive
Yes.
type of flavor. Where like you're either gonna like this flavor profile or like you're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think like where I'm at in my like enjoyment of IPAs is like I am happy at this point to taste them. I very much struggle to like finish strong IPAs by myself. You know, like I can have sessions. I will drink sessions regularly. There's a couple of even just like direct IPAs. It's like, this is enjoyable. That usually they're typically like the fruitier ones or something like that. So far, this one's pretty strong.
Yes, it is very strong. Yeah. It is meant to be strong. It is meant to be very hoppy. You don't have to finish it all. So this is our hoppiest beer on the list. We're going to start moving into some of the darker beers after this.
Gotcha.
But this is
the darkness at the end of the tunnel.
The darkness at the end of, wait. This one is still lighter in color. Mm-hmm. And so we're looking at probably right here an Imperial IPA. And this one specifically is probably around we'll hold it up. Yeah, it's probably like a 10-ish.
Yeah, it's actually like, it's kind of close to where the amber was, I was going to say.
Yeah.
It's lighter than you expected.
Yeah. And a lot of the times these Imperial IPAs are much darker. And so this one just is not, which is kind of interesting.
So this beer is coming in at 9%, right? This is the heaviest alcohol volume that we've had so far. And it seems like like when it gets into like a double or a triple IPA, that kind of trends with higher alcohol volumes.
Yes.
Do you know is there like an actual like reason for that correlation?
Yeah. Yes, there is. So one, it's going to be fermenting for longer because you're actually, so a double IPA typically uses about double the amount of hops that a single IPA would use, and that would kind of go crazy with the bitterness. It could ruin the beer, but they also add more barley to counteract that. So we talked about that before, where IBUs are not always necessarily a function of how bitter it is, because that malted barley can kind of bring it in, make it a little bit sweeter.
Rein it in a little bit, yeah.
And so you're it's a balancing act, but you are going to be fermenting it for longer, which is going to lead to the higher alcohol content with the more hops.
Gotcha.
that you put in there.
And I will say that that is very true for this beer, that it has a very strong like malty backbone.
Yeah.
And like as I drink it more and you kind of get like accustomed to the bitterness, that like maltiness is able to kind of like shine through a little bit more, which is pretty nice.
Yeah. Your initial taste is the bitter.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get it as you're swallowing.
For sure.
So this is the highest rated beer from Untapped on our list tonight.
Oh, cool.
By 0.01. So we
really edging out the victory there.
Edging out the victory. We have not drank the one that is right below it yet, but we'll get there.
Okay.
This is a Imperial IPA. And so the term Imperial specifically just means a big beer. So more flavor and more alcohol. A lot of the times used interchangeably with like a double or strong. And it's just talks about extra grains and extra hops to produce the higher ABV.
Okay.
That's what the Imperial means. There's not really.
So
like
I should expect a higher like alcohol content if it's saying Imperial.
Yes.
I should expect like bolder flavors or something. Okay.
Yeah. So typically IPAs cap out around 7-ish%, and the doubles or the triples are higher than that.
Okay.
So this one specifically, the Dogfish Head, is a 9% alcohol content.
Yeah.
So it's hefty.
It's a hefty beer.
It's a hefty beer. It's not something that I would drink more than one of a night. It's that.
Well, it counts basically as 2 beers.
Yeah, it does. But it's also like after you drink this, you're going to be very thirsty. Right?
Yeah, I'm already noticing that. Like just getting like kind of a bit cotton mouthed, I guess.
Yes. So one of the other things that I wanted to talk about this is that this beer is actually, you're drinking it from the glass that it's supposed to be drank from. So you're supposed to drink.
Woohoo!
Yes, woohoo, we did it.
I did it.
We finally did it. The double IPAs are supposed to be drank from the tulip glass, which holds the aromatics. So if you did pour a full glass, you would get that nice head, and you would get a lot of that as you're drinking.
Yeah, for sure.
Fun fact: the tulip glass was actually designed by Dogfish Head.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, Dogfish Head partnered with Sierra Nevada, which is the pale ale that we were drinking, and a glass maker called Spigula. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I'm not, I apologize.
It's okay. They're probably not listening.
Yeah. Right. They were designed and built specifically for IPAs. The regular glass, the pint glasses that they were normally doing, actually warm up the IPAs too quickly. And so you want to be drinking an IPA slower than like a Pilsner or something, especially an Imperial with the higher alcohol content. So you're going to be wanting to drink it slower, which means that it's going to warm up quicker. And so the tulip glass actually is also designed to keep the beer colder for longer.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why you keep them in the freezer.
Right, that's why I keep them in the freezer. Yep, I knew that. I meant to do that. It's not just that I thought frosted glasses looked cool and I wanted to impress people when I gave them one.
Yep.
But you're right that like the stem actually is keeping it off the table, which is also going to help kind of keep it cold.
I said earlier that there are over 120 types. There are actually over 170 different types of hops that are used to make beer.
Wow.
And each one has a very unique flavor. Alrighty, let's move a little bit out of what I enjoy and start getting into some of your favorites. So
this is the dessert at the end of the meal.
This is the dessert at the end of the meal. I want to make sure that I don't drop it as I pull it out here. I needed a porter for the flight. And literally I bought this one again off the name because that is how marketing works for me. This one is called Old Leg Humper. So it's Old Leg Humper by Thirsty Dog Brewing Company.
Oh, he's so cute though.
The
dog on the label. He's just a fat black lab.
He's just a fat black lab.
He's so fat.
The tagline for this beer is "So many legs, so little time."
Are we switching over to whiskey now? We're talking about legs.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. If you swirl it, you can.
If you swirl it, you get some legs.
So as you're pouring this into the glass, you're going to notice this is a lot darker than everything that we have been tasting before. And so
I was about to say, this is a strict departure.
Yes,
in color.
It is a strict departure. And technically the porters and stouts are ales. They have top high temperature fermenting yeast.
Yep.
However, they are typically thought of in a different type of category. So like I don't necessarily go out and say, I want an ale and grab a stout, right?
Right.
Technically they're the same, but usually they're kind of thought of in distinct categories. But this is getting a little bit darker than what we have been. So we're looking at this porter is probably going to be around 22, 24-ish, where we've been sitting at like a 10. So if you look at the show notes.
In IBU?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, in SRM.
In SRM, yeah.
SRM.
Okay.
So we're getting darker. It's almost like a black that we're looking at. So, but since you ask, IBUs, it's 24.
Yeah, you had said the number 24, and it actually like says that on the bottle. Oh. So that's why I was like, is that what he's talking about?
Yeah, so 24. So this is actually right around what the Pilsner was. A little bit higher IBUs than the Irish Red, but you're not going to get like almost any any bitter flavors, any hop flavors, because there's so much malt in it, so much that it's going to kind of like, if we think about it as like kind of a swing or a seesaw, it's kind of all towards the end, and you're going to get a lot more like caramel, coffee-like, or caramel chocolatey flavors with a porter.
For sure.
This one is back down a little bit in APV. It is sitting at a 5.8%, so it's going to be a little bit easier to drink than some of your heavier gravity beers.
Yes.
And so, but yeah, what I know you like porters. What do you think about this one? The Old Leg Humper.
So I will say, first off, my tasting may be impacted by the fact that I am coming from a 90 IBU beer.
Did you eat your pretzels?
I did eat my pretzels, yes.
Did you hear him eat your pretzels, watchers? Viewers?
Viewers. But point is, this is obviously a much sweeter beer.
Yeah.
And so coming off of that, it tastes extremely sweet. Probably more so than it deserves. But it does describe itself as a robust porter, and I think just like off of my taste, that's probably a fair description. We're also like, I'm getting a lot of foam even as I swirl it, you can see the head like really jump up. I don't know if that's, again, because we kind of bought the beers for this episode like a while ago.
Yeah.
And so it may just be that it's kind of been sitting, in a warm room before I threw it in before we threw it in the fridge. But overall, it is coming through with a lot of maybe competing flavors. Like I think porters sometimes feel like you get like these one or two, and like here's the flavors, and then it like it like kind of disappears.
Yep.
This one kind of feels like there's a couple different ones kind of crashing over each other.
Okay.
So like, and I think they're all the typical porter things: the coffee, the like the very bitter dark chocolate, like like you were talking about, the malty flavors of the dark sweet fruits and that sort of thing. So anyway, that's kind of what's maybe coming across. I'm trying to figure out right now if this is actually, if it's a good porter or not, because of the categories like porters and stouts, like we've talked about, this is where I've had more beers than other ones. I'm trying to figure out if I'm liking this one, or if it's just that I'm starting to get tipsy and coming off of like the double IPA. I'm like, man, this is the best porter ever.
Yes, this is amazing. I tried it. It's not my favorite.
Okay.
So,
do you like, are porters something you have a lot of?
I don't have a lot of them. I do like porters though.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, this one almost tastes sour to me.
Okay.
And so I don't know if you're picking up on that, but it seems like there's a little bit of a sour taste, which like it's described as having an estery, which is like a fruity flavor.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what you're getting, but I think it's almost like the fruit's almost gone bad. And so I don't know if that's
I know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
No, I'm picking it up too now that you've like mentioned it. It's like a fruit cake type of of like flavor where it's like, okay, like jammed or something type of fruit. You're right. So
I don't think it's a bad beer. I've just had better porters, I think.
Yeah.
So
I think as I've like taken a couple of sips of it, it's more in the aftertaste than like, like, cause I said it had these crashing flavors in the front. So I was kind of focused on that. Now that I'm like searching for that kind of like soured kind of flavor, it's definitely like kind of lingering with that. So I think you're right. I've probably had better porters, but tell me about like porters in general. Like what kind of makes them different than what we've tasted so far?
Really what you're looking at is a difference, and you're looking at more malt in like a porter or a stout than you would be in like a pill, or not a pilsner necessarily because that's a lager, but like an amber or a red or something like that. And so that's how we were talking about, like kind of the seesaw effect, where you're going to get a lot of the hops from, or the bitterness from the hops, and that can be balanced out by adding more malt. This is going to be adding more malt and kind of going to the other end of the spectrum to get a sweeter, not necessarily fruitier taste, but like a sweeter chocolate or more chocolatey taste. That's also why you're getting darker beers, is because you're using more of that. And then like a stout is going to be using like more roasted malt even. And so that's going to bring the darkness even down, which like you're looking at this, it's like, how can it get darker than that? But
right. I would say like, if you catch it with the light going through it, you can see that it's brown. Yeah. Like it doesn't come across as black with like a light behind it. If it's like against a dark surface, like it will look black, but it looks like a very, very dark brown. And especially on the edges, it'll start to pick up kind of that like a ruddy or a rusty type of color at the very edge.
Porters and stouts are fairly kind of compared a lot of the times because they're both bringing out those flavor profiles, and really kind of the difference in the two is that a stout has roasted malts and a porter does not. Okay. So there's still kind of like the same formula almost in how you're going to make it. You're just roasting, which are going to bring out some more coffee flavors in a stout than you're going to get in a porter. Porter's going to be a little bit lighter body, probably a lower APV. Okay. And so we'll get into an imperial here in a second, but the porter is going to be kind of the sweeter, easier to drink of the two.
Yeah, gotcha.
So I think that porters are probably, if you're diving into a craft beer sense, like outside of like a pilsner or something like that, I think porters are fairly easy to start out and drink. Just because they're so sweet, they're kind of like nice, and they remind you of like they have those chocolatey flavors, and so it's pretty easy for someone new. A new beer drinker to enjoy something like that.
Yeah. And I think they can also come across as like watery is not maybe the right word, but like thin, thin bodied, whereas like a stout is like
you're chewing it.
You're chewing it. It's a meal. You're like, oh man, this is called an oatmeal stout because it's like I'm getting chunks.
Yes. Does anyone have any floss?
Right, exactly. and porters are not that way. So you're right that they're much easier to approach. The only, I think, caveat there is like if you give a new beer drinker a porter, you're gonna have to warn them like this is not what you expect a beer to taste like.
Right?
It's gonna taste a little weird compared to what you might be thinking beer is going to be like.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be completely different than anything that you've had out of a can.
Or even knew could exist.
Yeah, exactly. So as we're enjoying the porter, I want to talk a little bit about the history of beer because I found that this was fairly fascinating. So about how long ago do you think beer was invented?
Well, I heard recently that the Egyptians were drinking beers and that they had 17 different types.
They do? They did? They do?
They did, they do.
They have more than 17 now, I think.
Thousands of years it lets you invent new types of beer. So I don't know. I'm gonna go like beer's maybe 3,000 years old.
Close.
If I'm up by a single digit again, I'm gonna be pissed.
I mean, one digit is wrong. So the first chemically confirmed beer was found in Iran about 5,000 years ago.
Wow.
which is very old, especially when you kind of think about and realize that written language just was invented 5,300 years ago.
Holy cow.
So as soon as they figured out how to write, they were like, yes, we need to like write this down.
Write this shit. Hey, nerd, pick up your pencil. Write this shit down.
The technique of brewing kind of came from the Middle East. So from Iran, Egypt, kind of like that area is where beer brewing kind of started, and then it's kind of propagated from there. Ninkasi was the Mesopotamian goddess of beer and was said to have taught the craft of brewing to human beings. So
appreciate that.
Yeah. Bless. that kind of started a long time ago, right? And then the invention of beer, this is kind of interesting, has been argued to be responsible for humanity's ability to develop technology and build civilization.
Huh.
Yep. And so this was because people were happier, and but actually it does kind of have it has sustenance, right? It has carbs, and you can be sustained on beer. Like we talked about kind of in the Industrial Revolution that shanties were used as kind of an electrolyte plus carbohydrate drink for people to work their long hours.
Right.
But the idea and the fermentation and kind of the brewing of beer led to the techniques and of kind of like understanding and building out some of the nutritional drinks that could sustain people, which kind of helped lead to that innovation, which I thought was kind of interesting. Yeah, I don't know if I said it correctly. It's Shandy, not Shanty.
D as in Dalton.
D as in Dalton, T as in Dominion.
T as in Dominion. Oh, because there's a Dominion card, Shantytown. I'm following. Yes, you are correct. But Dominion starts with a D. That's why I was confused.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, T is in Dominion. I was like,
oh, no.
Well, I don't
it doesn't
understand.
work. Yeah, no, I took a couple of steps, but we got there. I don't understand why you didn't follow that. That was easy. Oh, man. So they started brewing the beer about 5,000 years ago. Yeah. But however, the use of hops was actually not known or started until at least the 9th century. And so before that, it was a lot of not very flavorful beer.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they're like, we're just going to take some grain, put it in some water.
Yep.
Boil it.
Leave it there for a while.
And then drink it.
Yeah, like who was the first person that like did they just like forget about it?
Must have, yeah.
Yeah, and then just like drank and like, this is
I
bad.
feel great.
I feel good. I could innovate right now.
I can innovate right now.
But yeah, any other thoughts on the porter before we move on?
We're talking beer history. We talked about like you need, some sort of grain, you need water, but you also need yeast, right?
Yeah.
So like, and they didn't know what yeast was, right? So how did that like end up in the mixture? You know what I mean? Like how did they include that in the equation?
Yeast wasn't discovered as technically like a microorganism until recently. I think it was like the 1600s. Yeah. However, like they were still using yeast, right? They just didn't know what it was.
Right.
And so
it was getting in there somehow.
It was getting in there somehow. They were fermenting it somehow. And so the Egyptians about 5,000 years ago used yeast to make bread. And they thought it was a miracle, right? Like, they were just like, oh my gosh, yes.
This shit is crazy.
Yeah, God is good. God is good. Let's put it in a drink. But before like yeast was built in like labs as it is today, it was actually cultured by brewers. So like we're another Brooklyn Nine-Nine reference for you. Do you remember like the mother yeast or like the
mother dough or whatever?
The mother dough or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's something similar to that. So they would actually take a yeast cake where they would make the god stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And they would transfer that from batch to batch. Of beer. So they didn't actually know what it was. They just knew that it was necessary for making beer, and that it was just like this yeast cake, which sounds disgusting. Yeah. But like they would transfer.
So you're saying that like they just filtered it off or something like that, like from the, you know what I mean, like from the like where did you're saying yeast cake? Like is that just like a culture, like a dough basically that they maintained and they just tossed a little bit in every so often?
Yeah, it was just a culture of dough that they would. Like it contained a whole like it had a bunch of yeast and bacteria, and they just kind of like dumped it in there, and like it wasn't as effective as it is today now when we like single out and utilize just the yeast. But
the FDA wants to know your location.
Yeah, right. Not good. But yeah, so they were utilizing yeast without knowing what it was. They actually called it God is good. So they had the name for that.
That's pretty funny.
They did know that was the cause of the fermentation because they started getting bubbles. All right, let's move into the final beer of the night, which we have a stout. Specifically, we have
Oh baby.
Old Rasputin.
You got Old Rasputin.
Yes.
Old Rasputin.
The Imperial Stout.
The Imperials. This is one of my all-time favorite beers.
I did not know that you had this beer.
I've had this one, yeah. This
Good.
is a good one.
So I have not. I saw really good things. This is the beer that the Dogfish had 90-minute beat out by 0.01 on Untapped.
Yeah.
So this is also
the beer that
very
made me
highly
like
rated.
stouts.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
like
Well,
I
this
had
is a
this
great
beer.
capstone beer then.
I know, right? I had this beer and was like, oh, I like this.
Excellent. So this is, again, an Imperial. So we use that term with the double IPA. So it is going to be a higher alcohol content. This one is also a 9%. I don't know if it says it on there, but do you know what the IBUs of this is?
See, since I'm learning that it can be deceptively high, that's altering my answer. I'm going to go with like 45.
It's actually 75.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Is it really?
So this is our second highest IBU on our flight tonight. And so, but we're not going to get bitterness here. So because it is a stout, which means that the malts were roasted beforehand, the nose, you're going to get a lot of coffee. You're going to get a lot of coffee, chocolate.
It's hoppy coffee.
Hoppy coffee.
Hoppy coffee.
But yeah, you're going to get coffee, chocolate, licorice, molasses, those types of dark flavors. Also with this is our darkest beer of the night. If you hold this up to the light, you're not even going to get really any penetration whatsoever.
Right.
So this is capping out at probably about a 40. It would be our Imperial Stouts.
It's hard to.
You're having
through it.
You're having me hold it up to the light, and you can see like a tinge of brown on like the edge.
Yes,
right there. So maybe like a 39.5 is what we're looking at instead of a 40. You already said that you liked it, but go ahead and talk to me about it a little bit.
I think a lot of this beer has a lot of nostalgia for me. Obviously,
Okay,
being one of the first beers that I tried that was. Was an Imperial Stout and realizing like, oh, this is what I like. I think I have it up on a pedestal, like maybe slightly higher than it deserved. But overall, it's still like a very good beer. It has a ton of that like dark coffee bitterness like coming through.
Yep.
And like now that I'm like retasting it, it's like, and I'm looking for bitterness, it's like, oh, okay, I can see how like 75 is fair. Like I can see how it can definitely get there. But again, compared to like even the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale that we had earlier, this one doesn't feel nearly as bitter as that one does, even though it's an overall higher IBU.
Yes. Yeah, it's going to be a lot sweeter, I think.
For sure.
So, yeah, you can taste the hoppiness or the bitterness there, but it's very quickly counteracted, and you have to kind of look for it almost.
For sure. In like the nose, when you just like take a whiff, it comes across as like, for me, just like very complex. Like almost
there's a lot
like
there, yeah.
There's a lot there, like compete. Like your nose goes like, what the hell was that? Like, yeah. I don't know if you want to drink that or not. Like, your nose is maybe sending up some warning signs.
Yeah.
But like again, overall in the taste, like it is very strong alcohol content, like you mentioned. But it's not like it's not burning in it. It's going to come across as like tasty and sweet and smooth and dark and roasted and bitter. And it's just like Imperial Stouts do that, right? They have a ton of those sweet and bitter and complex flavors kind of coming across all at once. And so, I don't know. I could talk about this beer for a long time. Obviously, I'm like almost fanboying out about it.
Right.
Like, this is a favorite of mine.
Good. The other thing that I would talk to you about is as the porter was a bit lighter, this is going to be kind of a very thick mouthfeel.
For sure. Yeah.
So you're almost going to like chew it. Right, it's
closer
to bread than anything else that we've had on our flight tonight.
If you poured it in a pan and baked it,
yeah, exactly. This should be enjoyed out of what's called a stout glass, which is very similar to the IPA glasses that we were talking about. Mm-hmm. It was also developed by Spiegula, the glass maker, but this one was in a partnership with Left Hand Brewing Company.
Okay.
And so they have a couple of stouts. I think you've probably had some of those.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. So I have not had this one. This one is very good. I have not had this one before. I just tasted it.
Yeah.
I think that it would be easier to probably drink more Imperial Stouts than Imperial IPAs.
Probably.
Just because it's a little bit sweeter and it's almost like a dessert.
Yeah.
Right. Like
sure.
you said it kind of jokingly earlier, but like it does kind of taste like a dessert, a sweet dessert.
For sure. Like, and I still think like even if it might be easier to have more than one, like It'd be hard.
It would be hard. It'd be hard. They're heavy.
They're heavy. I would still like, especially for newer drinkers, like you would steer them away from imperial anything.
Yes, no,
right? You
don't do that.
You would not put them like stouts in general. Like even like you mentioned Left Hand. Like Left Hand Brewing Company has a milk stout.
Yep,
that was one of the first stouts that I drank. That like now that I've drank others, it's like actually not one of my favorites anymore. Like it didn't really hold up, but it made a really good like introduction. Like this is a milk stout. It has like lactose added, just sugar added. It's very sweet and easy, milkshakey and easy to drink. You know? And so stouts like they can kind of fill that spot. I would even say like my mom does not like beer in general.
Okay.
But if someone is like if I'm either my dad are having stout, not an imperial, but especially if it's like a milk stout or something, she will generally want to try it.
Oh, cool.
She's found that like those, she's like I like having a taste of them. She like generally doesn't want one, you know, like not a whole one by
nice
herself.
Taste.
Yeah. Like have a taste or like maybe split one with one of us or something like that.
That's really cool. All right. So as we're finishing the tasting, I'm going to go ahead and continue on with a little bit more of the history of beer. So we left off last one we talked was about the 9th century when they discovered that if you put hops in there, they taste a lot better. So kind of like hopping. Anyways, so by about the 14th or 15th century in Europe, we transitioned from making beer as like a family-oriented activity as the sustenance that it would provide into a more like an artisanal one. So you see this for like they're brewing for mass productions and a lot in like monasteries.
Okay.
And so you kind of always I've always heard that like, you know, the monks and their beer and they brew the beer and there's like Heaven and Ale is a board game, right? Where it's you know the monastery brewing the beer.
Right. I was about to say that like even in like in artwork or in like artwork in games, you know, it feels like if something is brewery themed or something, it's going to look like a friar.
They actually they when they would fast they would go through fasting periods at some points where the only thing that they were allowed to consume was beer, which like
hey Nelson, I have a great idea for a fast for us.
Yeah, let's do an episode. And they were still getting kind of the sustenance, the carbohydrates that they needed to function, but I guess they were getting drunk really quickly. But who knows? We talked about it earlier in the episode. 1516 was the adoption of the purity law in Germany. I'm not going to try and say it in the native German. And then since then, it's kind of grown into a global industry, right? So it's brewed in many, many countries around the world. Microbreweries are really big around us, where you'll see kind of like, you know, not mass produced, but maybe you have to go there to try their beer, right? You're not going to find it in a store. And so it's become more of like a hobby almost for a lot of people.
Yeah.
The global industry today, how many liters of beer do you think
are consumed?
Are produced each year?
Produced each year. Man, I don't even know how to... Well, let's see. I know that America alone has a.
I do at least 12.
I do at least 12. Well, what I was gonna that's true. But what I was gonna say is that I know that they net $100 billion. That's
a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. Let's go with like, I don't know, sticking with round numbers, I guess, like 1 trillion liters. I don't know if that's a big enough number or too big of a number, but I'm just going to go with 1 trillion liters.
You're close.
Okay.
So it is 2 billion hectoliters, which is about 200 billion liters.
Okay.
Which is
unit conversions,
which is a lot. It's roughly a lot of gallons.
A lot of gallons, yeah. But it is twice as much as the, profit of the United States or whatever.
Yeah. So I didn't know how to think about this because also like a billion is just a stupid large number, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're looking at that, to put it into perspective, I did some fun calculations to try and figure out how I could, relate it to something I could wrap my mind around, and I still can't. But it's enough to fill 80,000 Olympic swimming pools.
Okay.
An Olympic swimming pool is very large, and 80,000 is a very large number, and that's kind of where I got
to. That's two large things.
It's two large things. I was trying to like relate it to like the volume of a planet, and it's like not even close. Like planets are huge.
Planets are big. Maybe like lakes. I don't know. Maybe there's like some lakes or something.
I tried to do like Lake Erie. It would take 3 years.
Big fucking lake.
It would take 3 years to fill Lake Erie.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's actually very helpful for me.
Yeah.
3 years? I thought it was gonna be way more than that. I thought it was gonna be like it's gonna take like 300 years or something to fill a year.
No, it's I think it was like 2.87, which is hilarious that you brought this up because I thought about this last night. I was like, I don't know how, like, for some reason, Olympic-sized swimming pool, 80,000 seemed more than like 3 years to fill a lake. I was like, I don't know. I've never seen Lake Erie, so maybe that's it.
Yeah.
But I assume it's like an ocean.
Basically. I mean, it is in the sense that, like, when you stand on the edge of it, it has waves.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, lakes don't have waves. But yes, this lake does.
this big lake do.
Big lakes do.
Oh, man. But that's a lot of beer.
That's a lot of beer.
We do our parts.
We did 8 this episode.
Yeah. I'm not trying to brag or anything, but... Oh, man.
How many Fantasy and Some Flights episodes does it take to fill Lake Erie?
12. So that is kind of the end of what I had prepared for the episode. What questions or anything that you wanted to know that I didn't hit on that we want to dive in as you're finishing up your stout?
Sure. Let's can we talk about just like those like specialty or offshoot brands of beer? Like you mentioned sour beers earlier. Can you just like tell us a little bit more, me as a listener and also the other listeners? Like I guess
Watchers.
what kind of the
Viewers.
watchers, sorry.
The viewers.
The viewers. Just I don't know what to expect from them because I feel it's like now every time you go to a craft beer bar, like they're gonna have a couple of sours on there, right? Like what sets them apart? How are they kind of different from what I'm used to tasting?
So a sour beer is actually the oldest type of beer. So, which is kind of interesting. Sours are probably going to be like very tart tasting. Like it's almost like if you take like a Pilsner and dropped a Warhead in there or something like that. Like that. That's how I would describe the taste of sours. You're going to probably love them or hate them, right? I don't think that there's really that much in between there.
Yeah.
But basically, sours are made with wild bacteria and yeast. So instead of like specific yeast strains, they're made with a certain type of bacteria that gives the distinctive sour taste, and then the yeast adds the funky, earthy quality to it.
Okay.
And so it's kind of a combination of this. Today's sours are basically made with 2 types of bacteria and then 1 type of wild yeast.
Okay.
And so that's the difference. Is it's brewed a little bit differently, and it adds bacteria and yeast into it at the same time, which gives it like that tart flavor.
Yeah. Okay. Do you know, are they still like hopped? And the only reason I ask that is because a lot of times when I see a sour listed, it will list it as like 0 IBU.
Yeah, no, they don't. They have little or no hops whatsoever.
Okay.
Typically, the hops are there to give you the flavor, whereas the bacteria is giving you the flavor at this point. So when you're drinking a sour, you're wanting the bacteria to give you that kick, and you don't want to necessarily you don't want to like mitigate that taste by adding in hops.
Gotcha.
So I am not a brew master. I've tried 2 Mr. Beer kits and they didn't go great. But like there may be some area to play there, but I think that it's more kind of in the realm of I'm drinking a sour, so I want it to exemplify the sour taste and not necessarily quote unquote like water it down with like the hop flavor.
Gotcha.
All right, so we're kind of towards the end of the episode. So I wanted to kind of ask you and get your feel. You were saying earlier that you really were enjoying the Pilsner.
Right.
That was kind of your top when we had only had like 3 or 4. But like, okay, let's remove the Old Rasputin. Let's ignore that because that's elevated already.
You're right.
But what were your kind of favorites, or which ones would you not which ones would you not seek out in the future, or kind of what are your thoughts there?
I think the Pilsner wins the award for
most improved.
Right, for most improved, for like most surprising, maybe is another way. Like for most exceeding my expectations.
Yes, there you go.
There it is. The Karakin Pils wins the award for most exceeding my expectations.
There you go.
I really did like it, much more than, and even like all jokes aside, I think it was probably we tasted 8, but I think it's probably in the top 3 of the ones
good.
that I tasted tonight. I really did enjoy it very much. I think overall, like just probably. It's kind of a cop-out, I guess, to say like critically it's the best beer, because it literally is critically the best beer. But Dogfish had like 90. I can taste it and recognize like, okay, this is maybe not my type of beer, but like this is a very well put together beer.
Yes.
Like,
okay, yeah.
This is like for someone like me who doesn't like,
you can respect it.
IPAs, yeah, I can respect it. And to still even by the end of my tasting, like kind of be enjoying it, it's like, wow, that was a real accomplishment.
Yeah.
This is probably a really special beer.
Yeah, good.
So I would definitely like recommend picking that up, even if you're like a little nervous about IPAs, if you can find it in a pick 6 and pick up like a single bottle, I think it's definitely worth like sitting down one day and just like having the single, like it's only going to be only beer of the night or something, but just give it a try. Or maybe split it with a friend or something.
Yeah, that's
about it and just see if you like it. I think like on the lower end, like the Sierra Nevada like pale ale, it's like meeting an expectation. It's doing exactly what it wants to do, and what it wants to do is just like not my thing.
Yes,
so like it meets its flavor profile. It's an accomplishment. It's just like maybe not exactly like my thing.
Right.
I think the and then like you said, I don't know. I love the old Rasputin.
Yeah.
So long-winded answer, but I think overall the two that really like stood out as impressing me where I didn't expect them were the pills and the 90-minute, specifically because I thought I would hate the 90-minute, and I didn't hate it. I thought it was
good.
I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
So awesome. And then the ones I enjoyed like the most, I guess we didn't talk too much about the Alaskan Amber again, but like that was just like a very nice beer to drink.
Okay,
so
good.
I did enjoy that one quite a bit. And then Rasputin.
Yes. Yeah, you have to go with the favorite
for sure.
So I'm glad to hear that. I'm like really satisfied to hear that you, I don't know if enjoyed was the right word, respected the 90-minute.
I respected the 90-minute. Yes, I respected it.
That makes me happy.
I would say I enjoyed my tasting in that I enjoyed the experience.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So I'm really happy to hear that. So I think that's going to do it for us tonight.
Yeah.
So this was a really fun episode. I had a lot of fun putting it together. It's fun tasting like the entire flight of beer from like, light to dark.
Yeah. I liked that I had to do no prep.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate how much work you put into this for myself and for the watchers and the viewers.
The watchers, the viewers.
Yeah.
Smash that like button. Subscribe.
Oh, yeah. Oh, goodness.
If you want to talk to us more, you can reach out to us on Instagram, Twitter. We have a Discord now. We have an entire channel dedicated to booze. So
we do.
That's kind of fun. So let's get some discussion going in there. What is your favorite type of beer? What do you like? Do you hate IPAs like Dalton? Are you wrong as well? I don't know. I want to know. It was great talking and doing this with you. I'm gonna miss doing these in person.
I know,
but we'll do another one here soon.
For sure. We will.
Yep. So. Do we have bottles to cheers with?
We might be able to scrounge some together.
All right, buddy. Cheers.
Cheers, man.